Hi everybody, it's the TTE fan with Legos, and welcome back to the channel. Today I am looking at Season 2. If you haven't watched my review of Season 1, you should go and watch that first before you watch this. Season 2 is a very interesting season in my eyes, but also a very odd one. When it comes to new seasons of Thomas and Friends, they introduce something new characters or new locations to expand the world of Sodor. It is also the very last of many things in the production, notably the very last season to have Ringo Starr as narrator, because he decided to leave the production to continue his career in music. So with that said, let's have a look at Season 2. What was the word again?
Revo Thingagummy.
Revolutionary sequel. We have gotten a whole batch of new characters from the books, as well as the return of all the characters from Season 1. I'll talk about the new ones first. The first of these is Trevor the Traction Engine, who was saved from the Cutter's torch and given a second chance of life. He is a nice character, but there is nothing more to say about him, because later on in the show, he would just mostly appear in cameos.
Oh yes, I like children.
Duck the Great Western Engine is the next one, and is my favorite character of the Season 2 bunch, to be honest, for a number of reasons.
There are two ways of doing things, Duck told them. The Great Western way or the wrong way. I'm Great Western and don't we know it, Ray groaned.
Duck is definitely a fan favorite, and I can understand why he is so beloved by the fandom. Harold the Helicopter is really iconic. What I love about him is his rivalry with Percy, something that was touched on often in the show. They both would try to one-up each other, but still have a good friendship.
What really great arms you've got. They're nice arms, said Harold. I can hover like a bird. Don't you wish you could hover? Certainly not. I like my rails, thank you.
Then we have the first antagonist, that is Devious Diesel, who is a good scheming villain or bully figure.
I see you like jokes. You made a good joke about me yesterday. I laughed and laughed. Duck told me one about Gordon. I'll whisper it. Don't tell Gordon I told you. And he sniggered away.
I like Diesel's portrayal in the classic era. He was always depicted as a strong character, unlike in the later seasons. Next we get some twin characters, Donald and Douglas, the Scottish Engines. They are also my favorites. I really like their Scottish accents.
You're a muckle nuisance, said Donald. It's to leave you behind I'd be wanting. Well, said Douglas. Surely, James, it wasn't a you. You didn't say. Lush sakes, Donald. It's Henry. Dinna fess yourself, Henry. Wait a while. We'll have you out.
They even have a nice two-part story arc to establish themselves. There was another pair of twins, Bill and Ben, the China Clay tank engines. There isn't a lot to say about the twin tank engines, because they hardly did anything in this season. They are prone to be mischievous, and their jokes can make others laugh sometimes. That's about it for them.
This went on and on till the Diesel's eyes nearly popped out. Stop! You're making me giddy! The two engines gazed at him. Are there two of you? Yes, we're twins.
Boko the Diesel and Daisy the Diesel railcar are good, but they contribute very little to not only Season 2, but the whole model era, because of how they were neglected. Still, they are very interesting characters.
Look at me, she purred to the passengers. I'm the latest diesel, highly sprung and right up to date. Oh, well, said Boko, it's just a knack.
And, side note, the two green diesels even share the same face masks, which is so obvious to not notice. As for the other new faces, the spiteful brake van, Jem Cole, the vicar of Wellsworth, the barber, they all just have minor roles or one-off appearances. Now for the returnees from the previous season, and they are portrayed the same as they were. One thing to note is that the characters who were prominent in Season 1 were neglected a little to give more roles and stories to others. Season 1 is the series about Thomas, Henry, Gordon, and James, because the first 8 adapted books are focused solely on them. In Season 2, it was Edward and Percy's turn in the spotlight. Thomas has his fair share of main roles, while the 3 big engines and Toby as well were shafted into obscurity, only having cameos and minor supporting roles. Edward and Percy, who had little focus in the last series, both had some time to shine. Their full story arcs were pulled out of the books. Edward, the sensible, experienced, old-fashioned engine, was constantly mocked by the big, superior engines, but was able to prove that he is more capable and ready for anything by helping an old friend, saving a runaway engine, and performing a grand exploit to help his passengers. Percy, a naive and cheeky guy, was given a change and goes to work on Thomas's branch line and has his own adventures there. And I think that wraps up all I can say about the characters in Season 2. We have gotten fan-favorite characters introduced, and the old established oldies were used fairly good. The entire crew that made Season 1 possible had returned for another series. David Mitton as director, Mike O'Donnell and Junior Campbell as composers, and Ringo Starr as narrator for both English dubs. Everybody was back. The production began in 1985, and the series aired in the UK in 1986, and on Shining Time Station in the US. One interesting fact to note is the crew's choices for stories that were dropped. They have considered 4 stories for Season 2, Doubleheader, Percy's Promise, Gordon Goes Foreign, and The Missing Coach. These stories hadn't made it into production, unfortunately. Doubleheader and Percy's Promise were dropped and left off for Season 3 because the crew wanted Thomas-centric stories. Gordon Goes Foreign was thrown into the bin due to budget cuts, and The Missing Coach was only halfway finished before cancellation at the last minute.
Oh, Kaya!
The visual style of Season 2 is completely different to what it was previously. The island of Sodor looks like a heavy, grimy working industry, less storybook world type like Season 1. I think the team decided to create this style because the stories they chose for adaptation mostly have industrial complexes, yards, stations, quarries, and harbors everywhere on the railway. I have to admit, I really like the visuals in this series, but personally, I like the world of Sodor in vibrant, bright, cozy colors like in Season 3 and 4. There is a lot of impressive sets and model work, such as the viaduct, the watermill, Knapford Harbor, and Sudbury Castle. And just like the last season, Season 2 also has those technical errors. You know, like the engines having wonky eyes, the figurines have sticky tack under their feet, or camera equipment or the edge of set visible on the screen. Season 2, all of the episodes has all of these errors that were common in Season 1. But there is actually a lot that I can count. While I can give the crew a pass for those mistakes and praise them for making improvements, but many of these various goofs are really jarring and some can be easily avoided. Was it because the production was rushed somehow? Was it because of the cancellation of the missing coach? Or the crew just didn't bother to check their models before release? Now for the music. Mike and Junior's soundtrack for Season 2 is as good as before. The fantastic melodies that I'm very fond of are the Viaduct theme, the Watermill theme, the Ghost Train theme, and the themes for the new characters. The last thing I want to mention is Ringo Starr's performance. Ringo had stepped up to his game in the second series and brings the right energy for different tones. Depression,
Duck trundles sadly away, while Diesel smirked with triumph.
intense,
Oh, glory, look at that! James was just pulling out on their line from the station ahead. Any minute there could be a crash. It's up to you now, Duck, cried the driver. Duck put every ounce of weight and steam against the trucks. It's too late, Duck groaned and shut his eyes. He veered into a siding where a barber had set up shop. He was shaving a customer.
spooky,
And every year on the date of the accident, it runs again as a warning to others, plunging into the gap, shrieking like a lost soul.
humor,
If it isn't Gordon, said Ben, it's just a pile of old iron, which we'd better take to the scrapyard. No, Bill, this lot's useless for scrap. We'll take it to the harbour and dump it in the sea. Gordon was alarmed. I am Gordon, stop!
That's an excellent improvement I will give Ringo credit for. I really wish he would stay for more seasons. Okay, now let's have a look at the stories before we close this review off. When the crew is choosing Audrey-written books for a series, they had to skip some in the lineup due to their limited budget. For example, they have to skip the books about the narrow gauge railway and the miniature railway because they don't know how to build props in tiny scales at the time. They also can't adapt the stories that feature the unnamed engines from the other railway because they don't have a bigger budget to build models of them. Unlike the linear story order of Season 1, Season 2 has a compilation of various stories hauled out from different books. Wilbert's books 9, 11, 12, 13, 15, 16, 21, and 26, an annual story, and a one-off book written by Christopher Audrey, including the one that was written especially for the series. Like I mentioned before in my Railway series ranked video, Christopher Audrey was commissioned by the producers to write a book about the title character due to lack of Thomas-focused stories left to adapt. If you want to know more about this book, check out my video of the Railway series, linked in the description below. These are all random picked stories, but the team were able to get the continuity right, but with one issue, which would become a common problem in the show, and that is inconsistent story order. Meaning is that stories are adapted out of order and thus creates continuity errors. For example, in the episode Percy Takes the Plunge, Percy is chatting with Bill and Ben, who took the roles of the unknown tank engines from the original story. In fact, he tells them about the time he braved through a storm to take school children home, in Percy's Promise. In the Railway series continuity, this event happens before Percy takes the plunge, but in the TV series, it does not, because it was adapted in the next season. This is not the only continuity error. There will be much more when I review the rest of the classic era. Aside from that one inconsistency, I enjoy all of the episodes of Season 2. They are great, action-packed, humorous, and more amazing than Season 1, with some poor forgettable episodes too. If I had to pick one as my least favorite, it would be Thomas, Percy, and the Coal. I don't think this is a bad episode. It's just so boring. I do like how it portrays Thomas and Percy's friendship, but it doesn't do anything heavy-hitting. It's just rather uneventful, and their reconsideration of their quarrel at the ending feels rushed. In the original story, the two did not forgive each other straight away until the final story, Drip Tank. Having the story adapted in the series wouldn't have made the end of Thomas and Percy's fight rushed. The episode is weak, but not one of the worst. Now for the top 5 best episodes of Season 2. Before that, here are some honorable mentions. Number 5. Percy and Harold. I have said this before and I will say it again. I really love the banter of Percy and Harold, much like Thomas and Bertie back in Season 1. This episode is one of the best for its character interactions, the catchy music that plays during the race, and even better, it has fantastic camera angles, like this one of Harold's view in the air.
And Harold was high and alongside.
There isn't more to talk about than I already have. It's one of my favorites for sure. Number 4. Ghost Train. This series introduces a new tone for episodes. Spooky. And this episode is the very first. I really like the nighttime visuals, the fog effects, and the chilling haunted theme for a ghost. Ringo Starr's impression in this scene also gave me the chills.
Pee, pee, pip, 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 pee. Let me in, let me in, wailed Percy. No, no, not by the smoke of my chimney, chim. I'll chuff and I'll puff and I'll break your door in.
It is a nice start for a scary story, and the tone will be tapped into more later on. Number 3. Old Iron. A story from the Edward the Blue Engine saga, and boy does this pack a punch. Episodes about chases, runaways, and accidents are always the greatest in Thomas and Friends, and this episode is no exception. There is a nice build-up to the runaway James, good camera angles, and this amazing tracking shot of the two engines racing on the main line. Number 2. Edward's Exploit. Another exhilarating Edward episode in the list. Season 2 was an incredible year for Audrey's first character. When Edward was being bullied by the Big Engines gang and breaks down in a dark, rainy background, you do feel very worried for the old boy, and feel all the more excited when that said old boy succeeds yet again. The original story does a better job for showing how dire the situation is, but I do like the theme this episode expresses, the theme of triumph. Number 1. A Close Shave. It's another story about a runaway train like the aforementioned Old Iron. This episode gives a wild, thrilling experience as Duck gets chased by a runaway goods train down the line and desperately tries to stop it before disaster strikes. With the intense, fast-paced music, Ringo's energetic narration, and swerving camera shots, it feels like a crazy roller coaster, and it comes to a screeching halt with a devastating crash. What an awesome ride this is! Now, is Season 2 a perfect sequel? Yes, it is. While I would criticize this series much for its abundance of odd, carelessly made errors that are yet to be rectified, I would praise it for the production team's efforts and investments put into their sets and music, the exciting stories with a mostly solid continuity, and unique character pairings like Edward and Gordon, Percy and Duck, Duck and Diesel, Thomas and Bertie, etc. Though this is a sequel to the first, it doesn't mean the end of the line yet. The journey will continue for the next generation. Coming up tomorrow is Season 3, and I am really looking forward to do this. This is a very fascinating season and has a lot to talk about. That's all I have for today, everybody. Now I'm going to revisit this DVD for the next review. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow. What ideas will Britt Allcroft and David Mitton have in stores for us next? That is another review.